Hey, by now it should be apparent to everyone that a country like the United States that operates with a fiat money system, in other words, which prints its own unbacked, non-convertible, free-floating money, it has the power to issue a limitless amount of this money, and so long as its obligations are denominated in this money, there can never be an issue of solvency or a concern about its ability to meet its debts. Never, ever, ever, ever. And even the most die-hard Austrians and hard money freaks accept this fact, and if they are to tell you anything to the contrary, it's just sheer ignorance on their part and nothing more. However, some of the smarter die-hard money freaks will try to get you, but where they don't have much success is when they argue that the money printing necessarily, automatically results in inflation or even hyperinflation. And for some of them, this is the same thing as default or insolvency, or even worse. The problem is they have never been able to show how this comes to pass. Sure, they're going to toss out these very misinformed comparisons to Zimbabwe or Germany's Weimar Republic, both places where productive capacity was decimated by war or corruption, or where debts were denominated in some other currency or gold. Or that's about all they can do, is offer up these inapplicable examples of how we're headed for the same fate. In short, their only tactic is to try to scare you into believing their very ignorant and empty arguments. Arguments that can be so easily discredited. You see, the problem with talking about money printing and a rising supply of money leading to higher prices and all is that it presumes that everything else that goes into what makes up the price of some good or service is constant. But it's not. The price of things is determined by the quantity of money as well as the quantity of goods and services on hand and the velocity or the rate at which the money is spent. In other words, and I've been over this before, but I'll go over it again, if the money supply is rising, but the quantity of goods and services is rising at an equal rate or faster, or if the rate at which the money is being spent is slowing down, then the quantity of money can increase and prices will actually fall. You get deflation. So if the government is printing money to pay for things like infrastructure and healthcare and education and food and anything else, or if those payments equate to income to people who then turn around and go out and demand higher quantities of goods and services, which firms are happy to produce because it'll mean more profit for them, then there's no inflation. Or maybe those government payments are just being socked away as savings and not spent. Then we say that the velocity of money is low. And in that case, there's no inflation either. The fact of the matter is, these people who claim to be so smart and know so much about economics and prices and money printing and central banks and whatever are really very, very dumb and insecure. And they prey on your lack of knowledge or lack of understanding by using techniques that are designed to induce fear. But in reality, it is the promoters of these ideas that are really the dumb ones. They are so blinded by their own ignorance and so single-mindedly focused on bringing you, into that ignorant belief system that when you think about it, it's really quite frightening. Here's an example of something I heard from one of these guys recently. It's a guy by the name of Peter Schiff. Schiff talked about how the economy was headed for an inflationary crash. Of course, he's been saying that forever, but it's never happened. Anyway, Schiff argued that we were headed for hyperinflation because of all the supposed money printing being done by the Fed. Yet when he was asked why the economy wasn't as bad as he was predicting and why we weren't already in a hyperinflation, given the fact that the Fed had so greatly ramped up its money printing, he responded that the economic activity was only being held up by stores offering hugely discounted merchandise. So here he was, on the one hand, he was predicting out-of-control inflation or even hyperinflation, yet in the very next sentence, he explained the very mechanism that was keeping prices low. And he didn't even see the contradiction of his own arguments. And more recently, Schiff went on to attack the $1 trillion platinum coin, which is an idea that I spoke about in my last video. And when speaking about the coin, Schiff sort of segued into a little discussion on coins in general and how people really understand coins as money because they were made of metal and the metal has value. And that's when he said that's why a quarter is worth more than a dime, because it contained more metal. Well, I guess he never thought about a dime and a nickel, right? You see how stupid that is? He was completely oblivious to the fact that his example made no sense at all. But what I find really shocking is how people feel good about accepting someone like this as some kind of expert, when in fact all he is really a circus clown, a P.T. Barnum of economics. I guess that's even an insult to P.T. Barnum. Anyway, that's it for now, folks. This is Mike Norman saying, see you next time. Bye-bye.